The Death Mage Who Doesn't Want a Fourth Time. Chapter 16. Skills Make One the Ghoul King. So that's why I'm going to be participating in a battle with my life on the line. It's nothing out of the ordinary, so don't worry. Vandaloo, I don't think there's a single parent who wouldn't worry after hearing such words from their child. So you don't want me to fight? It's true that you're always risking your life, and if you try hard, you won't die, Vandaloo, but you have to make sure you cooperate with everyone else properly, okay? I know, Mom. The spirit of the kobold shaman that had been split in half vertically by Bogugan's magical sword spent 7 days traveling to this ghoul village. It delivered precious information about the noble orc who had established a large village and was now attacking other ghoul villages and kidnapping adventurers while amassing military force. Vandaloo had been worried that the ghouls wouldn't believe this information, but they did not doubt him. He was earnestly happy that they trusted him. 300 orcs, 100 each of goblins and kobolds. What will we do? Can we beat them?
Hey, what does it mean that there are 300 enemies?
That's 500. You're an idiot, aren't you? You can't even add numbers?
Goblins, kobolds, and orcs. They're all enemies of ghouls, aren't they? Each of us just needs to kill 5 of them, then we'll win.
Hey, are you including us in your numbers? We still have babies in our stomachs, you know. Bilde-san is 4 months pregnant, so I do believe that strenuous movements such as those of battle would be impossible for her. And their leader is a noble orc. No matter how weak he is for a noble orc, he'll still be stronger than Mother and Vigaro. What, Bastia, are you saying that Vigaro would lose to him?
Of course. It's obvious that I'd lose.
Vigaro, I'm sure you'd win.
Face the facts, you morons.
Well, while Vandaloo was feeling happy about being trusted, the ghouls were seriously discussing what to do about the large village of orcs. This was only natural. Their survival depended on the decisions they made here. The ghouls were seated in a circle around a fire in an open space, holding a large emergency meeting to decide the actions that the village would take. Boy, could you please confirm the enemy's numbers one more time? Since the ghouls at the meeting weren't settling down, Zadiris asked Vandaloo to repeat the kobold shaman's information. Incidentally, the kobold shaman informant's spirit had collapsed soon after reporting this information to Vandaloo. In order to gain revenge over the noble orc who had killed it, it had used his experience as a spiritualist, even after its own death, to communicate with other spirits and make its week-long journey to this village. Nobody would know whether it was simply very determined for revenge on its killer, or affected by Vandaloo's death attribute charm skill from very far away. Either way, now that it had delivered the information, it was now floating around Vandaloo like it was dozing off. The enemies are 300 orcs, 100 goblins, 100 kobolds, and a few dozen tamed beast-type monsters. There are about 600 enemies in total. The chief is a noble orc, and he has 3 sons. There are also quite a few orc generals, orc knights, and orc mages. The goblins are soldiers, chiefs, knights, and mages, but there are no generals or kings. Also, the enemy has attacked other ghoul villages, captured the females, and used them as mothers for their children, and they've recently started attacking parties of adventurers as well. The ghouls grimaced at the news of the enemy's forces, their extreme actions, and also the fact that members of their own race had been attacked, even though they belonged to other villages. Both the normal orcs and the higher race of noble orcs were races that only had males. That was why they used the females of other races to breed. In most cases, they used the females of goblins and kobolds, and they also sometimes used female cattle they stole from villages. However, possibly because they were a race created by the Demon King and his servants to harm humans, they preferred female humans the most. Though ghouls were treated as monsters by humans, their females were exactly like human females, other than the color of their skin and eyes. Since their roots could be traced back to the goddess Vita from the monster's point of view, they were just like humans. Ghouls found it very difficult to get pregnant unless Vandaloo cast his spells on them, and only 1 in 5 of their children were born safely. However, for some reason, if the father was an orc, there were no problems at all, though that wasn't a good thing at all. Is this because orc breeding is parthenogenesis that looks like normal reproduction? Instead of orc sperm fertilizing the egg cell, if the orc sperm simply absorbs and takes over the mother's genes, then that would explain why the offspring never belongs to the mother's race, I suppose. I'm not even sure if genes exist in this world. Well, either way, none of this helps solve the ghoul's declining birth rates. Vandaloo was contemplating these thoughts, but the ghouls had calmed down and began to discuss what to do after hearing his words. There were 4 very different opinions expressed at the meeting.
Hey, the orcs are targeting human villages and cities, right? Then they have nothing to do with us, do they? In that case, we just have to sit here and do nothing.
The opinion that the ghouls should simply watch what the orcs decide to do. They felt sorry for the female ghouls that had been captured already, and the ghoul villages that would be attacked in the future, but since they couldn't defeat the orcs in battle, fighting them was too dangerous. Well, Zadirus's village had no obligation to risk themselves to help other ghoul villages. It was cold, but it was meaningless for their village to come to ruin by trying to help others. However, this would be a poor move. The noble orc leading the orcs had been waiting for Zadirus to die. The reason for this was obvious. He was planning to attack this village once Zadirus died. Groups of monsters were generally ruled as dictatorships, where the ruler decided everything. Since the ruler of these orcs had been observing this village, there was no chance that they could avoid his attention. Conflicts between humans could be resolved through peace treaties, but monsters did not possess such concepts. And even if the noble orc somehow decided to leave this village alone, what would come next? If the orcs failed their attacks on the humans, adventurers would come to this devil's nest in large numbers. They would hunt down the remnants of the noble orcs' forces to ensure that no large group of orcs would ever form again. The nation of Murg was the country at the front of the Orbomb Kingdom. Its army was likely powerful, and it would surely have many adventurers. The chance that the noble orc's plan would fail was close to 100%.
How about running away while the orcs are making their noise? No, I suppose not.
There was a ghoul suggesting this, but he rejected his own idea. Of course, this was because it was unrealistic for 100 ghouls to be able to run away. The forest of this devil's nest was quite spacious, but it would be difficult for 100 ghouls, including pregnant women, to run away unnoticed by the orcs. It was possible to escape to another's devil's nest, or simply outside of this devil's nest, but these ghouls had lived in this devil's nest generation after generation, and were unfamiliar with the geography outside. Darcia and Sam were quite knowledgeable about it, but they only knew that escaping to a devil's nest on the Murg side would take over 10 days, and even if they made it there, the chances of being discovered by humans was high. And nobody knew what was around the mountain range. Just in case, Vandaloo had sent out small undead, such as insects and small birds, to the mountain range today, but it would take them over a month to discover anything. Then are we going to surrender to the orcs? Definitely not. We're better off dead than doing something like that. As Bilde said, the option of surrendering to the orcs and falling under their control was out of the question. The men would be used as slaves and soldiers, like the goblins and kobolds, used to fight against the humans until they all perished. The women would become mothers for the orcs. That would be the worst possible outcome. Let's fight. Let's reach out to the other ghoul villages as well. In the end, Basdia's view was the most realistic. They had to reduce the difference in numbers as much as possible, and then attack before they were attacked. Vandaloo knew that they would be busy for the next little while.
Well then, before that, there's something I need to say.
Vigaro, the next chief, spoke in a serious tone, staring at Vandaloo.
Vandaloo, you should leave this village as soon as possible.
No. Anyway, I have a suggestion.
Wait, don't change the subject.
As Vandaloo immediately rejected Vigaro's request for him to leave the village, Vigaro became flustered for some reason.
At this rate, you'll end up fighting the orcs with us, you know. Are you all right with that?
That's fine with me. Anyway, my suggestion is—
That's not fine at all. Don't be so stubborn.
I won't leave.
Stop interrupting me.
Vigaro had been doing nothing but interrupting people up until now, and now he was telling Vandaloo not to interrupt him. Vandaloo couldn't understand. Was saying, "That's fine with me," a bad idea? He supposed that it sounded self-important. To be safe, should he have replied, "I do not mind"? Vandaloo pondered whether it was his choice of words that was the problem, but Vigaro scratched his mane and began shouting.
This is a fight between us ghouls and them orcs. It has nothing to do with you.
Vandaloo had stayed in this village for a long time, but he was not a ghoul, and he had said that he would one day leave this village and cross the mountain range to get to the Orbaum Kingdom. That was why he shouldn't tie his fate to that of the ghouls. He was only a 2-year-old child. He shouldn't get involved in a battle whose outcome was so uncertain. It does have something to do with me. You are all my companions and my family. By the way, could you listen to my suggestion now? However, this 2-year-old boy did things at his own pace. He said these emotional words in a flat tone with no signs of embarrassment, and then tried to change the subject once more.
What can you even do in the first place?
Resisting the urge to smile after being told that the ghouls were a family to Vandaloo, Vigaro shouted this question at him. Indeed, if one were to divide the people of this world into the strong and the weak, Vandaloo would fall into the weak side. His mana pool vastly exceeded what was normal, and as a Dhampir, his physical strength exceeded that of a normal adult at the age of 2. On top of that, he was able to use death attribute magic that nobody in this world knew about. However, that was all. He had no understanding of martial arts, and his knowledge of group battle tactics and strategy was all self-taught. There was no way that he would be a good tactician. His vast mana pool was nothing more than simple mana. He couldn't use it to directly kill monsters, and no matter how much mana he had, he would die if his vitality dropped to 0. The only ways Vandaloo could use his mana was through death attribute magic, and no attribute magic. Death attribute magic was limited in its options for direct attacks, and he had only just recently learned no attribute magic, and he was still inept with it. If the enemy were mages, then he could use the magic absorption barrier to render them useless, but the enemies were orcs this time. Few of them were orc mages, and as a race, they relied on their physical strength to charge at their enemies with their weapons. Vandaloo himself had been aware of all of this ever since Darcia had been killed. However, he was also aware that there was any number of things that he was able to do. First, me being here would contribute 3 rotten beasts, and a phantom bird, and a skeleton soldier, as well as Sam, Saria, and Rita. Sam and the others were all Vandaloo's servants. Of course, if Vandaloo were to participate in the battle against the orcs, they would participate too. Since they were all at least rank 3, the military strength they added wasn't small by any means. And I think when you reach out to the other ghoul villages, having me around will be convenient. It was already known that ghouls were affected by the death attribute charm skill, so Vandaloo pointed out that this would be useful. Knowing that he was right, Vigaro could only let out a groan. You should leave it at that, Vigaro. Everyone knows that you were thinking of what is best for the boy when you spoke. Yeah, Vigaro, don't push yourself. That's right. You can't say that he has nothing to do with it, even if you don't mean it. Vigaro was on his own.
I don't care anymore. I'm going to make sure that you're so heavily involved that nobody will ever say it has nothing to do with you again.
It seems that the next chief has given his authorization, boy. So what is your suggestion? Finally able to talk, Vandaloo gave a sigh of relief and made his suggestion. It's nothing special, but I was thinking of distributing the equipment and magic items that I'm not planning to use in the near future to everyone. But judging from everyone's reaction, it seemed that this was something special. In this world, magic items have grades. From the bottom, they are lower class, though this is a poor way to say it, so these have also recently started to be called beginner class, middle class, upper class, special class, legendary class, and mythical class. Lower class items are things like swords that aren't as susceptible to rust as normal swords, leather armor that doesn't hurt the body if slept in, timers that ring an alarm after an hour, magical stoves similar to the portable gas stoves of Earth, magic street lights, and the like. Many of them are plain, everyday items that people from Earth wouldn't normally think of as magic items. The real magic item-like items start at the middle class, and many items that adventurers use belong to this class. Upper-class items are significantly more valuable and difficult to obtain, and special-class items are few and far between, treated as national treasures. Items called artifacts, such as sacred swords that only chosen heroes can wield, belong to the legendary class, while cheat-like items of myths are in the mythical class. The classification of magic items is dependent not only on their functions and the strength of the magic they contain, but also the effort and materials needed to create them, as well as their rarity. Apparently, the magical stoves were once considered middle-class magical items before mass-producing them was feasible. Okay, line up! The magic items from the dungeon that Vandaloo was now distributing among the ghouls were of lower and middle class. When Vandaloo had first obtained the magic items, he could only tell that they were magic items and roughly how much mana was stored inside of them. Even after he learned the no-attribute magic appraisal spell, he had no knowledge to make sense of the information, so he had continued hoarding them without knowing what kind of items they were. However, he thought that the ghouls needed to be stronger for a difficult mission like invading the large orc village, so he gave them out. Of course, for free. This came at a great cost to Vandaloo, but he had simply been hoarding them with no way to sell them for money anyway, and he had simply received them from the undead of the dungeon or found them inside treasure chests, so he felt no attachment to them as he had not struggled to obtain them, and so he generously gave them away.
This has a low-level agility enhancement. This has a low-level stamina recovery accessory. Both are little more than consolation prizes, but they are indeed magical items.
Then please, give those to Gouda-san and Gobbly-san. Vandaloo had Zadyrus use appraisal, then distributed the magic items one after another. If he was in a large human town, he would be able to sell them at 1,000 Amid each, a price not insignificant but not exorbitant either. Even so, they were precious items in this village in the Devil's Nest, so everyone accepted them.
The happy feeling of giving presents to people is a fresh experience for me.
On Earth, Vandaloo had no friends or decent family, and in origin he had been a laboratory animal. Having his first opportunity to give presents to someone in Lambda, Vandaloo felt very happy.
I'm going to give those orcs a beating with this. I'll give you a belly full of orc meat to repay you for this bracelet.
Incidentally, orc meat was apparently tasty without any special cooking methods, unlike goblin and kobold meat. Its taste was similar to that of wild boar meat, so the ghouls were looking forward to it.
Give the special battle axe I got from the skeleton general to Vigaro, and the kite shield is for Bastia.
Vandaloo handed over the items that were the most valuable among the items he had obtained in the dungeon, other than the suits of armor that had become Saria and Rita's bodies, and the weapons that they used. Vigaro thanked Vandaloo as he received the battle axe, and then looked at him with a serious expression.
Vandaloo, you should become the king.
I'm sorry?
Us ghouls join forces with other villages to fight against a common enemy. When that happens, the one who stands at the top and gives the orders is the king. That should be you.
I'm sorry?
From Vigaro's explanation, Vandaloo understood the role of the king, but he couldn't understand why he should be the one in such an important position. Vandaloo was confused, but Bastia looked happy at his response.
I'm glad you've agreed, Van. No, I didn't mean yes to agree, but I'm sorry.
Translator's note. This is height in the raw. This is sometimes used to ask the person to repeat what they said in a confused kind of way. However, height also translates to yes, which has led to this misunderstanding.
But, Van, everyone else says that you're the most suitable as well. Who do you mean by everyone? Everyone other than you, Van. When?
It seemed that they had been discussing it while the magic items were being distributed. Congratulations, Bochan.
This is a great success for you. We'll do our best, too.
Sam and his daughters had apparently also participated in the discussions. It seemed that not a single person had any complaints. Sam's faint white spirit form raised his hand, giving Vandaloo a thumbs up. Rita and Saria were also giving a rattling applause.
Oh, Vandaloo, you've become such a fine boy.
Darcia had woken up without Vandaloo noticing and was now crying tears of happiness. Was she feeling like a parent whose child had been chosen as the class representative or put in the leading role of the school arts festival?
No. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You might all be fine with it, but will the other villages agree? I'm a Dhampir, you know. I'm of a different race. Will they accept such a king?
It will be all right. That is not a problem.
Yeah, if it were a human, then there'd probably be some opposition, but since you're a Dhampir, it'll be fine.
Well, even I think that it'll probably be fine.
The founder of ghouls was thought to be the younger brother or sister of the founder of vampires. A Dhampir whose blood was half vampire was something like a relative for ghouls. In addition, Dhampirs were considered monsters by the Amid Empire and its nations. As Vandaloo possessed the death attribute charm skill, even Vandaloo knew that the other ghoul villages wouldn't be strongly opposed to him being the king. And you do meet the requirements to be king, boy, in terms of your ability and achievements. Vandaloo had once told Zadiris that he possessed the Strengthen Followers skill. Boy, the Strengthen Followers skill that you mentioned to me before does exactly as its name suggests, increasing the attribute points of your followers. Your followers are your undead, and we will be your followers as well. In other words, if you stand at the top position as king, you will strengthen all of the ghouls that follow your command. That skill is something like a king-specific skill. The Strengthen Followers skill is something that any monster bearing the title of king possesses. Thanks to this skill, the group of monsters led by the king is stronger than normal, and their numbers are also greater. Though Zadiris did not know this, there was once a goblin king who had obtained a level 10 Strengthen Followers skill, and his followers fought evenly against fully armed knights, wielding only tree branches and wearing fur loincloths. There was a reason that the Adventurers Guild treated the appearance of a king as a disastrous event. You are the one who made an effort to correct our weakness of not being able to reproduce easily, did you not? You opened up our future and helped us prosper. You have already shown success in doing so as well. If these are not the achievements of a leader, then I do not know what are. Vandaloo felt that Zadiris was exaggerating with her words, but difficulty with reproduction was a problem that ghouls as a race faced, and the fact that they couldn't increase their numbers had been a heavy restriction that prevented them from expanding. If the other ghouls knew that Vandaloo had a way to solve this problem, they would gladly gather to follow his command. Having never imagined that solving the problem of the ghouls' declining birth rates would lead to this, Vandaloo put a hand to his forehead. Vigaro seemed happy that things had gone well. He had made Vandaloo heavily involved as he had said he would, but he was slightly immature about it. I understand. I will become the king. And so, Vandaloo became the Ghoul King before even becoming an adventurer. Vandaloo has acquired the title of Ghoul King. The level of Strengthen Followers skill has increased. The first job for this king was armor fitting. Gudon, are there any tight or hard-to-move parts?
It's hard to move my elbows and neck. My helmet is too tight.
Ghoul men possessed the heads of lions and had arms so long that their fist would reach the ground even if they were standing upright. Since their appearance was so different from humans, they couldn't use the human-designed armor that Vandaloo had distributed without some adjustments. Normally, a skilled craftsman and some time would be needed to alter them for ghoul use. Now then, stand up. However, Vandaloo had thought of a method that didn't require either. First, he would have the ghouls put the armor on, and then turn them into living armor, to be more accurate, armor-shaped golems. The shape of the armor is going to change, so try moving your arms and neck. With a creaking noise, the armor gradually changed shape with the use of the golem transmutation skill. It took less than 10 minutes for the metal, human-shaped armor to become suitable for ghoul use. It looked unrefined as it had no decorations, but it had plenty of functions. There were some parts that the armor didn't cover just because the ghoul's arms were too long, but that would be fixed by using leather parts made from monster hides.
Oh, it's become comfortable. Thanks, King.
You're welcome. Next person.
This work wasn't king-like at all, but since the village's craftsmen only worked with monster hides, bones, and horns before, they weren't able to adjust the metal armor. That was why there was no option but for Vandaloo to do it himself. The king-like work, visiting the other ghoul villages and requesting for their cooperation, would begin tomorrow. The villages had been established in a way that their hunting grounds did not overlap, so they were quite far apart. And they thought of each other as rivals when there wasn't a common enemy, so even Zadiris didn't know their exact locations or numbers. Vandaloo's undead insects and spirit informants would help them estimate where they were. This seemed like an unexpectedly slow plan, but the noble Orcs village wouldn't act before spring, and possibly even as late as summer, so they had time. Of course, they wanted to save the captured female ghouls as soon as possible, but rushing things and getting defeated would be pointless. Incidentally, the ghouls didn't really think about saving the female adventurers that had been captured. Adventurers were normally enemies for ghouls. Basdia and Bilde seemed to sympathize for them as women, but not enough to risk anything for them. And Vandaloo had no desire to do so either. The adventurers of the nation of Murg were enemies for him as well. He knew that it was possible that if he saved them, they would say something like, "Thanks for saving us. In return, we'll exterminate you, okay?" Well, if I saw them being tormented with my own eyes, or if it turned out that they were people I knew, then I might think to save them. Vandaloo was aware that if he saw women being hurt, he would associate them with Darcia and his blood would quickly rise to his head. I suppose we'll do what we can quickly and efficiently, and if they're still alive after we win, then I'll save them. If he abandoned captured adventurers, he was worried about what the cheaters who would be reincarnated here in the future would say, so he did intend to save them in the end. Now that I think about it, should I tell Zadiris and the others about my circumstances? Yes, I'll tell them after this. Zadiris, Vigaro, Bastia, those three, I suppose. I'll make them heavily involved with me as well, just as they've done with me. As Vandaloo was thinking this strange revenge, the next person needing armor fit came forward. It was Bastia. Bastia, is it tight somewhere? Vandaloo had been told to drop honorifics now that he was king, so he omitted the son, and Bastia replied with a casual, "Yeah." He had thought that the women's armor wouldn't need adjustment, as ghoul women had identical body shapes to humans. My chest is a little, no, very tight. Now that you mention it, most of the armor was designed for men. He realized that he needed to adjust everyone's armor after all. The levels of Golem, Transmutation, Surpass Limits, and Status Effect Resistance skills have increased. About titles. Titles are acquired when an influential individual and many other people recognize you as bearing that title. It is also known as a written name, alias, or degree. The effects of a title depend on the reason the title has been bestowed on the individual and the meaning of the title, granting new related skills or increasing the levels of existing ones and strengthening their effects. Ghoul King. This title increases the effects of strengthened followers and death attribute charm skills on ghouls. Also, it increases the level of strengthened followers skill and treats the value of the number of ghouls under its influence as double when calculating other effects. Skill explanation. Strengthened followers. This skill increases the attribute values of individuals belonging to a race under the skill bearer's influence. It also has the effect of increasing fertility and the rate at which offspring of affected individuals develop. This skill's level increases as the number of followers increases. The skill is level 1 below 100 followers, level 2 at 200 followers, level 3 at 500 followers. The humans, elves, and dwarves that are designated as people in the Amid Empire cannot acquire this skill. But the new races created by Vita can acquire it, in rare cases. However, the majority of creatures that possess this skill are monsters, such as goblin kings.